City and community leaders address juvenile crime plaguing Baltimore.
There's a lot of frustration across the community.
New tonight, the actions they want from state lawmakers and their sharp criticism of the head of Juvenile Services. Plus, an 18-year-old charged with more than 50 counts of attempted murder may soon be released onto the streets.
Do you agree or disagree with the judge's decision?
A city schools teacher is running for mayor.
After the third student that I was teaching was shot and paralyzed, I realized I had to do more than just teach.
The problems in the school system, she says, need to be fixed right now. Then, a student is found with 3 loaded guns on him at a local high school.
I mean, that's unacceptable.
What a former mayor says needs to happen to keep our schools safe.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Well, juvenile crime is the focus of a Fox 45 News town hall in South Baltimore. Residents complain about a lack of accountability for young offenders, calling on elected leaders to take action. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson. The brother of a Brooklyn Day mass shooting victim, Aaliyah Gonzalez, is among those speaking. He wants to know why 18-year-old Tristan Jackson is being held in a juvenile facility despite his age and the list of charges he's facing.
I just don't understand why we're not stressing the importance of the biggest shooting in Baltimore history, and we're not making it an example of the situation.
Mackenzie Frost is standing by with the issues voiced at tonight's town hall. But our team coverage begins with Rebecca Pryor and questions for Mayor Brandon Scott as Tristan Jackson is moved from an adult facility to a juvenile facility.
In the wake of the worst mass shooting in Baltimore City's history,
we won't stop until we find those responsible and hold them accountable.
with 2 killed and 28 others injured.
We're not going to be dismayed by cowards that committed this mass shooting, and we're going to continue to remove those folks off the street.
Mayor Brandon Scott vowing to hunt down and lock up those responsible.
I hope these folks don't sleep well, because we're not going to sleep until we pull them off.
Among the first arrests, 18-year-old Tristan Jackson. According to charging documents, police placing Jackson at the scene of the crime using GPS coordinates from an ankle bracelet the Department of Juvenile Services was supposed to be monitoring. Police also claiming video from CCTV surveillance cameras showing Jackson spraying 5 rounds in the direction of 7 unknown individuals who were fleeing. Facing 57 counts of attempted murder and weapons charges, in August, a judge deeming Jackson a danger to the community, holding him without bond in an adult facility. But last Friday, Judge Charles Bloomquist approving a motion to move Jackson to a juvenile facility.
Legally speaking, minors are minors and adults are adults. It just doesn't seem to follow the logical course of where most cases track.
The decision shocking local attorneys Fox 45 spoke with who have no involvement in the case.
It is highly unusual for something like this to occur.
It would be extremely rare, no doubt.
And Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, who in a statement to Fox 45 wrote in part, quote, "We do not believe that an adult should be housed in a juvenile facility with children while he awaits trial on adult charges." Bates also warning, due to capacity constraints inside DJS detention centers and PREA laws, which prohibit adult inmates from being housed where they could have sight, sound, or physical contact with juvenile inmates, Jackson may be released from DJS detention.
He can go home on an ankle monitor. That could theoretically happen, which I think is a very scary proposition.
And would undermine Mayor Scott's promise to keep the Brooklyn Homes mass shooting suspects off our streets. Do you agree or disagree with the judge's decision?
The judge's decision is the judge's decision. I am not a member of the court. It is not my job to make that decision.
When the Brooklyn Homes shooting happened, though, you called for accountability. You said you wouldn't rest until these suspects were found and faced accountability on all levels. If he's transferred back to DJS supervision, there's a very real possibility that they might not have a safe place to put him and he'll be released back into the public under an ankle monitor. So is allowing one of the suspects of one of the city's worst mass shootings to potentially be released calling for accountability on all levels?
I'll say it again. Our job on the accountability is to make the arrest. We know that I believe that the home monitoring thing needs to change. No one was talking about that before me. I'm glad that you guys are talking about that now. You're welcome. But we know that what we have to do, my job the residents of Baltimore know my job is to make sure that our police arrest these individuals.
If he's potentially released, though, wouldn't it put the...
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next, Emily.
With our last question cut off, Fox 45 emailing Mayor Scott's office asking, the city state's attorney's office says allowing for the potential release of Tristan Jackson would put the public's safety at risk. Is it not the job of the mayor to protect the public he serves?
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Well, Mayor Brandon Scott's office responded to Rebecca's question, saying the mayor doesn't believe Jackson should be released on home monitoring. The statement went on to say the power to make that decision doesn't rest with the mayor's office or BPD. An administrative judge still needs to approve that transfer. Fox 45 News sent questions to the Maryland Judiciary asking when or if that will happen, but they declined to comment. We also sent questions to all members of the General Assembly asking if they think Jackson should be transferred. Senator Ron Watson tells us because of the severity of the crime, he thinks Jackson should remain in an adult facility. And Senator Corey McCray, Delegate Jackie Addison, and Delegate Kaylin Young all say that decision is within the courts, and they'll take this concern into consideration during the legislative session coming up in January. Well, this judge's decision is not the only one raising concerns. Fox 45 News has been looking into what exactly happens inside courtrooms and uncovered multiple questionable cases. Most recently, the controversy surrounding Jason Billingsley. He's the man accused of murdering Baltimore Tech CEO Pavel Lepere. He had a long criminal history dating back to 2009, including sexual assault, attempted murder, among other charges. Billingsley should have been behind bars at the time of the murder, but was ultimately set free. There was also the case of convicted arsonist Luther Trent. Judge Melissa Finn accepted a plea deal from Marilyn Mosby's office, the former state's attorney, that ultimately released Trent. Trent served less than 6 months in jail after he admitted to trying to burn down his ex-girlfriend's house with her and her roommates inside. Judge Finn eventually overturned the plea deal, and federal prosecutors eventually sentenced Trent to 12 years in prison. Last June, there was the case of Austin Davidson, the man police say killed a Wicomico County Sheriff's deputy. In 2019, he faced 20 years for armed robbery, but Judge Finn sentenced him to probation before judgment, then setting him free. And days after that case, Fox 45 News learned that Joseph Black, the man accused of hitting and dragging a police officer with his car, was also out on a plea deal from Finn's courtroom. He'd been charged with attempted homicide, but that was pled down to handgun charges, setting him free after 20 months in prison. That brings us to our question of the day. Do you think some judges' decisions are putting the public at risk? So far, 97% of those who voted say yes. You can make your voice heard by going to foxbaltimore.com/vote. The debate surrounding Jackson's case is part of a growing rift between lawmakers and prosecutors surrounding juvenile crime. We've heard from police and more than a dozen top prosecutors across Maryland saying young people don't fear consequences because of the state's juvenile justice laws.
What we're seeing is just delaying this delinquent behavior that turns into adult criminal behavior, and we need to get to these youth sooner.
It would be like legislature raising the speed limit to 100 miles per hour on interstate highways and then questioning why we're not writing more speeding tickets on the interstate.
Juvenile crime is also a central topic of discussion at tonight's Your Voice, Your Future Public Safety Town Hall. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost moderated that event and joins us live in the studio. So, Mackenzie, we understand the family of Aaliyah Gonzalez, one of the two people killed in the Brooklyn Day mass shooting, attended the town hall tonight. What did they ask the panelists?
Yeah, Guy, Aaliyah's brother and mom were both there, and they were both pretty blunt in their questioning. It really comes down to holding those responsible accountable, and what will the city do to educate young people about the dangers of some of the behavior?
I just seen earlier on the news today that Tristan Jackson, the 18-year-old who was 18 at the time of the shooting, he got sent back to juvenile, but the man is 6'5", 210 pounds, and he was 18 at the time of the shooting, and he also had an ankle monitor at the time. So I just don't understand why we're not stressing the importance of the biggest shooting in Baltimore history, and we're not making it an example of the situation. And I just want to know what you would do if you were, like, what's your plan of attack?
Something went drastically wrong with supervision for that individual, and that needs to be fixed.
Will you introduce education in the form of assembly, presentation, or something to these young kids when it comes to gun violence and drug use.
And I agree, it's got to start earlier. And as a former teacher, you can identify it early as well. I did early childhood, and that's where we really got to begin that process.
Well, the legislative session is just a few weeks away, Mackenzie, as you know, because you'll be there covering it. Yeah. But what do the panelists say they want to see from lawmakers specifically?
Simply put, they want to see some action. We know there have been conversations about making changes to the juvenile justice laws, but really the panel made it clear the conversations have happened, and now it's time to see some actual legislation and holding leaders of various agencies accountable.
I think the most important thing that can happen is that the legislature makes sure and holds the purse strings to ensure that these agencies are working together. That's what I think the root of the problem is. The legislature obviously has an opportunity to deal with that. There's going to be tweaks to the law every single year to make it more effective, make it fair, ensure it's working for everyone and keeping communities safe. I have no doubt that there will be tweaks this year.
But I think there's enough people this year going down in January to want to make sure that they're being held accountable. You know, and I'm not talking about locking up and changing laws to lock up young people, but they have to be held accountable.
There's no way that they can reconvene in Annapolis and not realize that things need to be addressed. What that looks like through the legislature, that's their job, not mine, but we will hold them accountable. It is frustrating when anyone who disagrees with what was passed as the Juvenile Justice Reform Act is cast in the light of wanting to lock young people up and forget about them.
And I pressed Councilman Costello on his comments about using the purse strings in this various conversation. I asked him if he meant adjusting funding for DJS if policies are not being followed. The councilman didn't directly answer that question, but we do know that Senate President Bill Ferguson previously told me earlier this week the same thing about when I asked him what can be done to make sure DJS is following the various policies. The Senate President did talk about using the budget authority to make sure that happens. Interesting,
Mackenzie. So when it comes to problems within the Department of Juvenile Justice, and we've talked about that a lot, many are pointing to DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi. He, of course, was at a town hall just yesterday, of course. What's the panelists' take on his policies? Because that town hall was pretty raucous.
Yeah, it was on Monday in this similar neighborhood of South Baltimore, and the panelists tonight didn't really answer directly questions about DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi's policies, but they were clear in their frustration about the system overall and how kids are being handled. I asked directly if they believe DJS Secretary Schiraldi is the right person for this job.
That's a question that's better suited to the Maryland state senators or delegates. What I know is this, is that folks do not feel safe. There's an expectation that government do everything it can to protect people. And I think everyone's expectation is that that will happen.
Based on his philosophy and what's going on legislatively, that people need to come to the table, state's attorney, the legislators, the Department of Juvenile Justice, they need to be at the table to figure out what's the best plan.
We're held accountable to pay taxes. We need leaders that are held accountable as well, which is a lot of people who are frustrated with a system that as basic residents of the city, we know nothing about because it's held back from us to know each step of the process. Something's broken. Somebody needs to stop pointing fingers, and they need to be held accountable.
Now, Kai, we did invite Mayor Brandon Scott to participate in this discussion, but he refused to do so.
Interesting. Mackenzie, thank you. Secretary Schiraldi also in the hot seat at a public safety town hall that Mackenzie mentioned on Monday. His tense exchange with a deputy Baltimore City State's attorney highlighted those key agencies that really aren't on the same page.
Secretary Schiraldi, I would really love to see your data.
Absolutely.
Because, and this is from 22.
Yeah, and you're going to see the next one in less than a month. I'd like to see some data from you, though. I'm not really hearing too much data from your office.
Schiraldi believes young people should be kept out of the adult prison system until 25 because scientists have determined the human brain isn't fully developed until that age. While Governor Moore has called the DJS secretary a reformer, Fox 45 News has heard from others who say it's time for change.
When it comes to hearing from DJS specifically, what do you want to hear from the secretary about what's going on?
His resignation. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I just don't think he gets it.
The real person I'm concerned about is my cousin Vinny. He's arrogant and he's ignorant. If he had a clue, he would know what the old folks know: a burnt child dreads fire. These kids need consequences.
On a Harvard University panel, Schiraldi said parole and probation should be eliminated, arguing the systems don't deter people from crime and don't rehabilitate offenders. Fox 45 News spoke with some experts who pushed back on those claims.
One of the two things probation and parole are supposed to do is keep us safer. Parole made us less safer. Probation had no impact.
There needs to be some type of supervision for these people. I don't agree that all juveniles need to end up in a juvenile detention center, but again, some of them need to have some type of correctional supervision, aka probation, because again, it's important for them to understand that what they did was wrong.
Last night, we asked if you think Governor Moore should replace DJS Secretary Schiraldi. 96% of those who voted said yes. Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight, a Dunbar High School student is arrested after school officials say they found 3 loaded guns that belonged to him. Why a former mayor says he's shocked with the level of security at city schools. Fox 45 obtains exclusive video of a tow truck theft in Baltimore County, one of several in the past 2 days. The bizarre trend and why some say it's a gateway to other crimes.
We're getting ready for a quiet and mild day tomorrow. Good for holiday travel. I'll let you know. How it looks getting closer to Christmas and my Weather Authority forecast.
And coming up after the break, a Baltimore mayoral candidate has seen the impact of city violence firsthand as a teacher. Why she says lessons learned in the classroom can translate to leadership at City Hall. A Baltimore City teacher who has seen the devastating impact violence can have on young people now hopes to use that insight as the next mayor of Baltimore. Wendy Boswell recently sat down with Project Baltimore's Chris Papps, revealing her plan to save the city by first saving the school system.
Wendy Boswell
has never run for political office.
If you were elected mayor,
Yes.
She never wanted to.
how involved in the public education system would you see yourself?
But this 62-year-old mother of 3 from Baltimore felt she had to.
I would see myself very involved with the public school system.
Bozell is a Baltimore City Schools teacher. She started 10 years ago at Sinclair Lane Elementary, where she saw firsthand the district's dysfunction and disorganization.
The heat was broken, so in order to fix that problem, they put in a portable boiler that pumped in heat. Half of the school was 100 and some degrees, and the other half was maybe 30 or 40, and the gym was always cold.
Bozell's classroom was in the hot section.
How do you teach in those conditions?
It's very difficult when you have kids that are special needs. So I brought in fans for their desks. I tried to do anything I could to make it a little more bearable for them.
Today, Bozell teaches Home and Hospital, which is a program for students who cannot attend school due to medical conditions.
I got them when they're to a point where they've been put together by shock trauma or Hopkins.
But it's the reason why Bozell students cannot attend school that convinced her to run for mayor.
After the third student that I was teaching was shot and paralyzed, I realized I had to do more than just teach students in Baltimore City, that I needed to make them safe and change the school system.
Bozell says 3 students became 6, all of them the victims of gun violence.
If you look at the people that are in our prisons right now, most of them they don't have a high school education. And so what other choice do you have? It's crime. So if you want to stop crime, you have to change our school system.
Which is why Bozell says her main platform as mayor would be fixing Baltimore City public schools.
It's broken and we need to change.
Bozell sees 2 main problems within Baltimore City schools she believes must be corrected now. The first is that the district must centralize school funding. About 15 years ago, under then CEO Andres Alonso, principals were given control of their individual school budgets. Bozell says that policy has created 165 individual schools that all have different books, different technology, different resources. She says principals are focused on budgets, not education.
I feel like schools will be able to change if the principals can do their jobs. Instead of worrying about millions of dollars in budgets, which they're not chief financial officers, let's get them making sure kids come to school, make sure the teachers are teaching. That's the first thing that we have to address.
Which Bozell says directly leads to the second problem, student attendance.
So it doesn't matter what's happening at the schools if the kids aren't coming to school.
In 2016, when current school CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises took over, 23% of Baltimore City students were chronically absent. In 2019, that number nearly doubled to 42%. By 2022, 58% of city school students were chronically absent, the highest level in the state. Bozell says she's pulled the records for her students, both the victims and the perpetrators of crime, and found all of them were years behind in their education. And all of them missed 50 to 100 days of school per year.
If kids aren't coming to school, why aren't they? So, and what are they doing? Well, a lot of times that we've seen in the news now, it's crime. So we have to implement programs where kids could make money, maybe an internship where they learn a skill, make a little bit of money in high school, maybe also in middle school. And that way, they are making money, they have a reason to come to school.
10 candidates so far have announced they're running to be Baltimore's next mayor. Current Mayor Brandon Scott is the only one who has publicly supported Dr. Santelises.
There needs to be some changes in leadership.
Other candidates, such as former Mayor Sheila Dixon and Yolanda Pooley, have already called for the CEO's resignation.
What is your feeling on Dr. Santelises? Do you support her, or do you think she needs to be replaced?
Unless she can pivot to having schools be run centrally, I would have to call for her resignation.
Do you see any indication that she is going to make any significant changes? I mean, she's been in there for 7 years.
No, I really don't see that.
There does seem to be a consensus from teachers like Bozell and school leaders that chronic absenteeism is a big problem in public education. Coming up on Monday, Project Baltimore travels to Hagerstown to show you how one school has taken an unorthodox approach to get students into the classroom. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
At least 4 tow trucks stolen in the past 48 hours, likely to commit more crimes, according to police. We break down the bizarre new trend.
For holiday travelers, it looks good over the next few days. We're talking mild temperatures and dry weather here and across much of the region. However, next week, there's the chance for rain. I'll let you know how that could impact post-Christmas travel plans in my Weather Authority forecast.
And as we go to break right now, here is a look at Towson, Baltimore County. That looks like York Road. Israeli forces continue their air assault, in fact, in Gaza, killing at least 40 people in a series of strikes. At least 100 people who were injured were taken to area hospitals before it was evacuated because of bombings. Now, this comes amid ongoing protests here at home calling for a ceasefire in the Middle East. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the war in Gaza needs to move to a lower intensity phase, calling for Israeli forces to avoid civilian casualties.
We expect to see and want to see a shift to more targeted operations with a smaller number of forces that's really focused in on dealing with the leadership of Hamas.
Well, Blinken calls the suffering in Gaza over the past 2 months gut-wrenching, but emphasizes Israel's right to respond following the initial Hamas attack. Last night, we asked you if you believe Israel should continue fighting until Hamas has been eliminated. 12,000 viewers across 70 cities weighed in. 88% of those who voted said yes. Coming up, 3 loaded guns found in a Dunbar High School student's locker, according to authorities. The latest on the investigation as a Dunbar security guard weighs in. And our coverage continues tonight. Why some residents in Baltimore say they don't feel safe despite a drop in gun crimes.
People don't feel safe. The quality of their neighborhoods not feeling safe. The juvenile crime, the carjackings, the car thefts.
Well, public safety is top of the minds for tonight's Fox 45 City in Crisis Town Hall. City and community leaders, along with mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon, joined our panel to talk about the problems and potential solutions. Mackenzie Frost hosted that town hall and joins us live now with more. And Mackenzie, we understand a number of the murders and non-fatal shootings in the city are down this year, but people are still concerned. And I want to address this one issue. Mrs. Dixon's voice was going out because she didn't feel well. Is that correct?
Yeah, she said that she was losing her voice. It was kind of coming and going throughout the evening, but she said she felt okay. That's why she wanted to participate in this conversation. And when we're talking about public safety, we had several people from the community ask questions saying that they simply don't feel safe in their own neighborhoods. We know carjackings are down, but new numbers from the Baltimore Police Department out today show there have been 10,766 cars stolen this year alone. That's a 215% increase from this time last year. And I asked the panel about the numbers and what we're hearing from the current administration. I know that when we often hear statistics from the mayor, he touts carjackings are down compared to this time last year, but car thefts, as we know, continue to rise. Councilman Costello, do you think that is the mayor trying to, I guess, shield the reality of what's happening by talking about carjackings instead of talking about the reality of car thefts?
I can't speak for the current mayor, but what I will say is that is mincing words. The bottom line is that people do not feel safe. So hard stop, that's the most important thing. People need to feel safe in the communities that they work in and that they live in. And people don't feel safe right now because we've had over 10,000 car thefts. We need to act with a sense of urgency that our community leaders are acting with, because they're hearing from our neighbors every single day. Elected officials are hearing from our neighbors every single day. We have to act with a sense of urgency.
And it's the apparent lack of urgency that a lot of people brought up tonight. We continue to hear from community members feeling like the city simply isn't doing enough to improve the safety. Kai.
Mackenzie, thank you. Now, just hours before our town hall, police say they recovered 3 loaded guns in a student's locker at Dunbar High School. Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live with the latest amid ongoing issues at Dunbar. Jeff?
We are learning tonight that those 3 guns were found inside a student's locker, but so far no one can explain why they were loaded.
At Dunbar High School, no one can explain how 3 guns, believed to be loaded, turned up at the school.
I mean, that's unacceptable.
Former Baltimore Mayor Jack Young volunteers at Dunbar, where he says security is tight.
They come in through our scanners, and we even had the wands to wand them too. So how they got them in there, I really don't know. I really don't know how it got in there, because we do a thorough job of making sure that we screen everybody to come into the school.
Sources say the guns belong to a 15-year-old student. In a letter to parents this afternoon, the principal wrote, the weapons were located during a search related to a student incident. The weapons were not used in conflict on campus. In October, bullets were fired at a Dunbar High School football game. Police arrested a 15-year-old for the injury of a 12-year-old boy. And in September, police arrested 2 more students for firing a gun that shattered a Dunbar cafeteria window.
But if you were to talk to any parents in these neighborhoods, we all are fearful of our kids going to school.
The growing amount of youth violence has Michelle Hines crying for help. Her own son, Isaiah Carter, was gunned down outside Patterson High School in March, and her pleas for help, she says, have gone nowhere.
I'm still seeing the same amount of kids outside. I'm still seeing kids walking down the street, and I'm like, is this a school day or not? But kids are getting guns, kids have weapons, kids are going to school, and we're terrified.
We need more parental, involvement with their children. They need to be asking questions. They need to be sitting down talking to their kids to find out exactly what's going on with them. Because, if they don't, the gang's going to get them.
Former Mayor Jack Young is calling today's discovery disappointing for a school which he says is on the rebound.
Just these few incidents that try to tarnish the image of the school. And it's not going to tarnish the image with me. I live right around the corner. And I love Dunbar.
Well, the principal is telling parents tonight that appropriate legal and disciplinary action will be taken, but is not elaborating further. We're live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. The discovery at Dunbar High School comes just 1 day after a student and teacher were stabbed by another student during a fight at Carver Votech, according to authorities. Police tell Fox 45 News the student arrested in the stabbing has been charged with aggravated assault, but several parents expressed their frustration with violence at Carver, also saying they weren't notified by the school in a timely manner. Well, we took those concerns to Mayor Brandon Scott.
And we're going to continue to support them to make sure that they have the resources that they need, but also that we're holding those people accountable. I know that notifications were sent out. I had people calling me about it.
Another Baltimore mother shared this video with Fox 45 News, saying school officials didn't let her enter Matthew Henson Elementary School after learning her 7-year-old son was assaulted. The mother says her son was left unattended in a classroom with another student when he was assaulted. She's planning to file a lawsuit alongside the civil rights group Racial Justice Network, saying the school failed to treat her son or notify her of the assault.
My son has to do physical therapy now because of what happened. I took him to the hospital and he had a concussion and he had bruises to his ribs. And that's just unacceptable for a 7-year-old. He was left unattended. I can't even wrap my head around it.
Well, Sharice Harper said son has not returned to school. Fox 45 News sent questions to Baltimore City schools about the handling of this incident. So far, we have not heard back. 28-year-old Christopher Gamble is facing a dozen charges after the shooting death of his 2-year-old daughter in Park Heights. This happened Sunday night inside of an apartment building. Baltimore police say Gamble told them His daughter shot herself between the eyes with his gun. Police say Gamble bought the gun illegally, and it still hasn't been located. According to dispatch, Gamble took his daughter to the hospital to Sinai, but then left and returned later with the girl's mother, reportedly wearing different clothes. Police are continuing to investigate. Fox 45 News has obtained video of a stolen tow truck, one of at least 4 similar thefts in the past 48 hours. Vincent Hill has more on the trend in a story you're seeing first on Fox.
It's usually a tow truck coming to get your car. But pay close attention to this video. 2 people get out of a car and run straight to this tow truck in Baltimore County at the city line.
My tow truck right here was stolen on Monday.
Mardo Afero's tow truck stolen just after 11:45 Monday night. The alert on his camera waking him up out of his sleep.
When I saw it, my tow truck was coming out from a parking lot. I called, 911.
Baltimore County Police took a report that night.
When you see, what you're working hard for, and somebody just come and take it, it's feeling really bad.
Wednesday morning, his tow truck was found, damaged and ditched in South Baltimore.
We can see in through the window, they broke the steering wheel. The ignition. Yeah, I see, a leak right there, right now.
The tow truck found by this man.
I was actually taking my kids to school, and we happened to come across his truck parked on a side street.
Before taking his kids to school.
He called me at 6:45 this morning. I said, serious?
Will Perkey got a phone call.
What do you mean? He's like, well, you might want to get down here.
His tow truck also stolen Tuesday night.
The gate's normally locked all the time, never leave it unlocked. Somebody ran through it.
Destroying the gate and causing extensive damage to the truck.
There's 2 other tow trucks around the corner stolen. There's a couple of them a couple weeks ago stolen.
Will says he's heard the stolen tow trucks may be used to commit other crimes.
That's what somebody else is saying, that they're using them to steal more cars.
Fox 45 reached out to Baltimore County and Baltimore City Police.
So you was calling the tow truck for my tow truck?
Yeah.
The county does confirm Mardo's truck was stolen and are working to determine if it was used in any recent auto thefts. Meanwhile, both tow truck drivers left behind with the bill.
At least $4,000 or $5,000 in damages, the windshield, the top of the roof.
We'll see, how much it costs. We don't know how much damage they doing, until I bring it back, to my garage.
Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Donald Trump being taken off the ballot in one state for the 2024 election. Could it create legal chaos? Did Colorado overstep its authority? I'm Scott Thuman with a look at the legalities coming up.
And get ready for a cold night as temperatures fall to the upper 20s and low 30s. We'll wake up to freezing temperatures, but for the first day of winter, it'll be mild by the afternoon. I'll let you know what you can expect coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.